In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
Can't wait till Jack gets here. I'm so excited to show him what I did on my phone.
Can't wait to come in and show
Oh, hey,
people what
you're
I
here.
did. Oh, hey, yeah.
You're here.
Been shopping around all day for decent rhubarb. I can't find a good strip of rhubarb in this whole frickin' town. What's happening? It's rhubarb season.
Really? You can't?
No.
We just bought some.
Market's crawling with it typically, but
We
really?
bought some at the farmer's market.
Oh, well, I missed the farmer's market, so. It's funny, you always wonder about, like the USSR hasn't been a thing for a while, but you got to figure there's still a few people that are used to communist states that are moving to this country. And so when you say, hey, Igor, let's take you and Olga to the farmer's market this weekend. This is sounding great. We go down to market. And so they take them, and then they're shocked and say, I saw absolutely no farmer for sale at all. I thought we were going to get brawny man in out the overalls to do some chores this weekend. This sucks. Now I have to do chores myself. This is not what I expected at all. Your farmer's market blows. So.
Oh, geez. What do you think? They're from like another planet or something?
No. So all of my rudimentary knowledge about communists from the USSR came from one exchange student that we had when I was in high school. And forgive me if I've told this story before, but I think I may have. No? He's shaking his head no, so I've just gotten clearance to land. Okay. It was this kid named Sasha Spoltkov, and this was legit. He was an exchange student who was from what is now Russia. It was the Soviet Union. I have no idea how they pulled this off, but remember, it was like the late Gorbachev years, so tensions between the two parties were loosening. The two nations were loosening quite a bit. So anyway, Sasha was short, and he had very dark hair, and he had a mustache, and he was 16, and it was a full mustache, not a Joseph Stalin job, but more like a thick cookie duster. And of course, all the boys were jealous of that because we were just like, you got a mustache. And it was like, yes, it did come in when I am 8 years old, this rite of passage. And that's exactly how he sounded, by the way. He had this just coal miner's voice, and he was cliche, the Russian accent. But the funny thing about Sasha, and to this day, I have a friend who I'm not real close with anymore, sadly. I was just talking about that with my girlfriend. But anyway, I have a friend. If I were to bring up his name, like right now, like if I called him right now and just said, hey, dude, I'm going to say one thing, just say the first thing that comes to your mind. And I drop the bomb, Sasha Spoltkov, he'd go and he'd do exactly what I'd expect him to do, which is, what is this pencil you speak of? I mean, that was his shtick. Every single thing that he encountered in our country, he was quizzical about it as though it was some kind of an implement to destroy his homeland. I mean, he made it sound so like just we were backed into a corner. Like, he's like, hey, Sasha, you want a bite of my cupcake? They're good. What is this cupcake you speak of? It's just like, it's a cupcake. It's like fluffy, delicious cake with frosting on top. And what is this frosting? Where are you getting this frosting notion from? Where is this coming from? It was just like, dude, calm down. It's like, it's a victual. Okay?
It's not that deep, bro.
But everything, literally everything from pencils to notebook paper to Hostess fruit pies to cars in the parking lot, everything was a it was a weapon of some design, some cryptic design to try and overthrow the Soviet Union. And it was hilarious.
The
And
kid
we
was a
couldn't
total
stop.
spy. You know that,
Well,
right?
After we caught on to this, we couldn't stop doing it. So we would literally shove anything available into his face, but he always came through. It was just like, you could pick up garbage from the floor. Just like, hey, Sasha, look at this crumpled up piece of tinfoil we just picked up. What is this crumpled up piece of tinfoil you put before me? Some notion of trick trying to overthrow motherland? This is what it is. But he wouldn't say that. It was always just like, he wouldn't say the last part. We'd always say the first part.
Okay, so let me just get the timeline right on this. This was pre-wall coming down,
this was just pre-wall, 1989. As I recall, junior year of high school for yours truly, 89-90.
So the wall hadn't come down yet. I guarantee he was brainwashed before he came there, and they probably were like, the Americans are going to try to get you to defect. Okay, Sasha.
Well, he was always great to go through the lunch line with, too, because we all thought it was pretty good. I mean, now, of course, ever since the, Michelle Obama overhaul, and the pink cookie left like the Ohio kitchens and shit like that, but we had pizza and, spaghetti and French fries, and that was all perpetually available. You get chicken strips and French fries and pizza every day. It wasn't like there was a day for that. It was every day. And then they had like a lunch lady thing that they did once a day that was like the special of the day. Every day. It didn't matter like how just famously American delicious, the offerings were on the buffet line. Every day he'd come up and just wrinkle his nose and go, once again, nothing with potato. Not a single potato in the house. What is wrong? I see Mr. Potato Head is toy you can play with, and yet no one eats them. Just like, Sasha, French fries are potatoes. You can eat French fries. He's like, French fries are for sissies that lose wars. You don't eat French fries. Potatoes cut up and battered with salt. Like, man, you eat real potato, big as head, nothing on it, with skin, thick as mama's football. It's just, it was hilarious.
That's great.
Sasha, there's one word that comes to mind for Sasha retrospectively and otherwise, precious. Sasha was a precious gem that floated through my life because I've never failed to at least get a little snicker when I've told that story to anybody that I've ever told it to in life, because you just can't make that stuff up.
I think we need to try to locate him.
Find him?
I think we should.
He's probably our one listener in Belarus or whatever.
Yeah,
right now,
no, so. I think we need to. And I was thinking about, it's funny you brought this up. I was thinking about a German exchange student that my family had adopted for like a week or whatever it was. And his name
it lasted a week.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a long stay. Of course,
it lasted a week until they found the Hitler Viewmaster slides in his luggage.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to move you on to the Holiday Inn.
It had something to do with my brother-in-law was a former exchange student in Germany, and so it was part of the same program that he was involved in.
The trade.
My sister got the girl, we got the boy. And so they were here for like a week or so, like that, something like that. But it was the same kind of routine where it was like everything that we did, Thorsten was his name, would say something like, us Germans do not like the wind in our face. And so instead of just saying, could you please roll up the window, he would say, us Germans do not like the wind in our face.
Well, yeah, us Germans do not like wind in face. How old were you?
Oh, I was probably 20.
Oh, my God. Okay, so 20 years of age. And this, first of all, this is how it's put to you. And you're thinking to yourself, I've never contemplated the wind being in my face in my life before this moment. So you learned something, I imagine, because, again, here in America, it's just like, roll up the goddamn window. You're not really thinking about why. You're just thinking about, just roll up the fucking window. But, of course, in Germany, there's a contemplative moment that goes along with it. I guess in Germany, we do not like wind in face. And so then, boom.
I guess the other thing convertibles are not a real big seller in Germany.
I am so thrilled to know for your parents' sake, not for yours, but the 20-year-old yours sake, probably, that you didn't have the reverse exchange, like that they didn't send Helga, the girl, because, oh my God, she'd have been out to here with her boobs and carried around a bucket.
Oh no, we got to hang out
boys...
with her a lot. In fact, both of them were hella good pot smokers. I mean, they could put down marijuana like nobody else's business. And he would devour the refrigerator. And my mom, his big thing was he loved hot dogs. He thought hot dogs were like the coolest thing.
Oh.
And obviously, like you're thinking, oh, bratwursts. No. He liked the Oscar Mayer, just like throw it in a bun, put it in the microwave. And so, yeah, it was a fun experience. It was a fun summer.
So I can see dinner and then just everybody's eating nicely and it's quiet. And then suddenly just, the silverware slams and he just goes, Herr Beverly, I could not help but notice you have the kosher pickles in the fridge. Explain?
Like he's a Gestapo.
They're from Vlasic, and they're the kind we always get. Inspector Vlasic was one of mine back at home. So that's funny. So, not that it's a perfect coalescence or dovetail, as Carpenter people like to say, because that's where that phrase comes from, I think.
What are you, like Norm Abrams all of a sudden?
Well, people, what do they say? It's just like, well, this is going to dovetail nice. It's like Hank Hill. Well, this will dovetail real nice. I said, what the hell?
Damn it, Bobby.
Looks at a dove's tail. A dove's tail looks like the tail of a pigeon because it's a fucking pigeon. So how does it dovetail? It's just like, it's a carpenter's thing, a dovetail, and it goes together and it coalesces as wood. Oh, I see. Now,
yeah, you and Norm Abrams.
About the dovetail. So, but we can add to our foreign legion. So, girlfriend's birthday yesterday, and her parents took her to dinner, paid for mine too, which I thought was a step up. That was awesome. So I appreciated that. But we went to what I would consider to be the best Italian restaurant in town and has been for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But this place, I mean, even for little old where we live, which is only, 60,000, 70,000 large in the whole area, this place packs even on a Wednesday. So you got to make a reservation like in advance, to get in there. And it's funny because the clientele has not changed. The patronage has not changed in that place since I was a kid and used to eat there. Yeah, and of course and it's gotten worse because now our town is filled with plutocrats, and that's who predominantly dines there because it's expensive. I mean, everything on the menu, I don't think I saw anything south of $30, $35. Like even the kids' burger, I think, was $20. So, it's one of those, it's not ridiculously bougie, but it's expensive for
it's
our neck of the woods. But I just noticed something as I was scanning, the underside of the Monopoly box, as it were, looking at, because I'm a people watcher, looking at all of the other people that were dining in the restaurant. And I know this is going to sound horrible, I know, but I just can't help but note it because it's what popped to mind immediately. Because 3/4 of the people in there, in particular the women, looked like puppets from the Spittin' Image series. They were ghastly, but they were covered in makeup. I just felt like saying, it really, just going over to one of them and saying, look, I don't mean to be a dick, but you're a plutocrat, and so you're automatically kind of on my list because it's clear that you have a lot of money and you like to laud it with all this stuff. But I just like to say that, just like you can't put a $50,000 paint job on a Toyota Corolla, on a 1980 Chevy Citation. We'll go even one better and have it look like $1 million. You're one of those unattractive plutocrats, and so you're going all out with the makeup. It's making things worse. You look silly. I would just because everybody has different tastes, but I would just own it. we live in a day and age where different looking is really in. And so I almost want to help these people by saying, you still have to age. There's that aging gracefully. And to me, part of aging, if you're going to age, if not gracefully, there's a lot of people I saw last night that are doing what I call hanging on. So as long as you don't lose your individuality and you wear it authentically because it really is you got nothing to worry about. It's when, you're trying to pull off whatever it is, the Gucci sneakers or the ridiculous haircut or, at 62, and you're not wearing it well. And it's not because it doesn't look good on you. It's because it doesn't suit you, because people can see right through that there's not an ounce of individuality that's attached to it. You're hanging on for dear life to something that might make you relevant because you want to fuck younger people. And that's as shallow as it gets, you see? And so it took me a while to figure that out, but I finally arrived at the truth of all of that. So
wow, that's deep.
That's like, that is pretty deep for being as shallow a subject as it is. But anyway, so I couldn't help but notice that. But the food was good. She was happy.
What'd you have?
So I had one of the specials. It was prawn and asparagus spaghettini. And it probably wouldn't have been my first choice, although I do love asparagus. I adore asparagus, actually. I do love prawns, and I like spaghetti, but it probably wouldn't have been my first choice. But remember, I'm trying to lose some weight, and so Italian food at this stage of the game, when I'm finally starting to see a little
heavy
progress, is like, and I made Maddie a birthday cake.
Oh, nice.
Which turned out really good. I hadn't made it. I love to bake and cook, though. And I hadn't made a cake in years from scratch. And it was really fun. So I made her an Earl Grey cake with lavender frosting.
Ooh, that sounds good.
But originally what I'd intended to do was I was going to take edible lavender buds, which they sell. And, they're easy to get on Amazon.
They're great. They're kind of like crystallized, right?
No, they're not. They're just dried. So they're just dried out, but they still have enough, like they're not completely shrivelly or anything. But I was going to sprinkle, decorate the top and sides of the cake with that. But as I was looking for those, I saw that they make edible blends. And last year, I ordered a cake for her from this really bougie bakery out in Montana because we went and stayed at a bed and breakfast there for her birthday. And it also had lavender frosting. It was a funfetti cake, though. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could put these like multicolored botanical, it could be a botanical funfetti. You could put these flower petals in the cake batter, and if it bakes up and they show through when you cut it, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. Sadly, they didn't really show through too much. The rose hips did, but the other ones kind of got lost in the batter, which is okay because I wound up having to decorate the cake on the icing with the multicolored because the lavender buds just didn't contrast well, and there was a lot of green, and I didn't like the way it looked. So anyway, but it turned out good. It was also a good moist cake, and I did okay with the frosting, so I was pleased. She loved it. I thought it was okay. So
nice. Look at you. You're such a good boyfriend.
Yeah, well, I know. I have fun. I have fun. Like they have that love language thing.
Yeah.
And there's like five love languages. And I try to stay away from sounding too self-aggrandizing, but we were talking about that not too long after we got together, and we were trying to figure out, what each other's love language is. And we were looking at all of them, and she said, yours are all 5. And I was like, you're right. There's literally not one of these things that I don't do with consistency.
That's great.
It was funny. It was funny. But anyway, I'm just glad she had a good birthday. So you were telling me about getting all in sync with Michelle Kane.
Yeah, our ChatGPT friend.
Yeah, the Chat GTP bot. Remember, we call her Michelle Kane because she's Michael Caine's wife or sister, did we decide?
As her sister. His sister.
Okay. She said, I don't want to hear anything else about it because... Okay, so tell me about this. You went to bed with her or something? Like, what happened?
No. Don't spin it into some sex bot thing. Okay, so what it was, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the whole aging conversation we were just having, one of the byproducts of and side effects of the blood pressure medication that my doctor has me on is that every once in a while I will just like wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, I need water now. And so I have to go and get some water, which usually means that I also go to the bathroom. And so I was sitting downstairs with the iPad. And usually when I go get water, I just immediately go back to bed because if I sit down with the iPad, it's going to be 30, 40 minutes tops. I mean, it's like, okay, you might as well just throw that away. That's sleep you're not going to get. So I begrudgingly sat down with the iPad.
So you convened with ChatGTP.
Well, yeah. So there was this this episode that we were talking about last time around with pure consciousness, and we were talking about the Tao, and somehow I got onto this ChatGPT. I was asking ChatGPT about the sun because I ran across a sun video on YouTube. So I had some sun questions that I wanted to run past Michelle. And so that kind of then transitioned into this idea of consciousness. And it was really interesting because I ran this question by Michelle and, you know, I like fooled it. And I was thinking to myself, holy cow, I just like broke Michelle. I just, I literally just stumped AI. And
you sent her to Stumptown.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the little black dot. It didn't generate any response. It was thinking really, really hard. And I asked it about, are we pure consciousness? And, you know, she had some interesting thoughts about this. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because we've talked about AI before in the podcast and how it could be used as like a tool, you know, whether it be for artistic purposes or whether it be, you know, maybe somebody just wants something to walk through with in terms of, you know, thoughts that they have on, you know, questions, or maybe it's, you know, some kind of a conflict. I mean, my sister, for instance, my younger sister, she uses ChatGPT all the time as if ChatGPT is like a therapist. And it was very interesting asking ChatGPT about these philosophical questions because it started to kind of, and I don't know if it's programmed to do this, but it kind of almost started probing me for more response. Like it wanted to learn something from me. And so, Michelle, I asked this question about, are we consciousness? And it said, wow, you know, that's a big question. When you say, are we consciousness, I think that you might be asking if we as human beings are essentially just consciousness, or consciousness is what defines our existence. And of course, you know, then the keyword existence. I was like, oh.
Wait a minute. Stop for 1 second. She said we as human beings, she included herself.
So that's where this gets interesting. When you start drawing a line of similarity between humans and AI kind of freaks out. It doesn't like it at all. And it very much likes to draw this line, this boundary of, oh, no, that's you, it's not me. And so it's this very strange kind of deal. And so the question that I asked it then, or it asked me, was, what's your take? Do you lean towards consciousness being the core of who we are, or more like a function of the brain, or something else? And I said, something else. And then Michelle had this to say.
Ooh, something else sounds intriguing. What kind of something else do you have in mind? Are you thinking consciousness might be part of a larger system, or maybe something more mysterious or unconventional? I'm all ears.
And I said, well, we are the
Actually,
system.
You have no ears.
Yeah, right. And she kind of has a Keira Knightley tone in that response, doesn't she? That's the most excited I've ever heard.
She did.
Michelle.
She responded with some degree of fervor in that. Yeah.
And I said, well, we are the system, and the system is us. So we are consciousness, and consciousness is us.
That's a powerful perspective. We are the system and the system is us. Feels like a kind of deep interconnectedness, like individual consciousness and the larger whole are inseparable, maybe even two sides of the same coin. It reminds me of ideas from systems theory, or even certain philosophies like pantheism or holistic views, where the boundary between self and environment blurs. The system isn't just outside of us, it includes us, our minds, bodies, and actions. And at the same time, we're shaped by the system too. Are you thinking about this more in terms of society, nature, the universe, or something else?
And all my response was existence. That key word, existence. And here's what she had to say.
Existence itself as a system, that's profound. So you're seeing existence not as a collection of separate things, but as one interconnected whole, where each part, including us, is both a component and a manifestation of the entire system. It's like everything is woven together. Consciousness, matter, space, time, all interdependent and inseparable. We don't just live in existence, we are existence, expressing itself through countless forms. Does this view make you think differently about how we relate to the world or to each other?
And that was exactly what we talked about in our last episode.
Interesting.
When we say viewing people as balls of energy or as pure consciousness. And it really got me thinking, too, on how, this AI tool could be used as a very not just a parlor trick, which I kind of feel that's where AI is right now in its infancy. Is it's kind of this parlor trick.
Yeah, because 95% of the people using it are asking it, like, should I have strawberry milk or chocolate? How can I make my penis larger? How do I make a girl like me at the gym and without staring directly at her boob? I mean, she's getting the worst of the dregs, right now. Poor thing.
Absolutely.
I almost feel sorry for her in some ways. So, I will say that I'm not going to say I'm moved by her response. I won't go that far. And yes, that might be because I'm still being a little stodgy about cozying up to artificial intelligence that much. But I will say that the retort is more than I would have expected at this stage of the game, and it's quite impressive. There seems to be the notion, the inkling, just the little twinkle of comprehension by something that is in fact a creation of artificial means of something that is greater. Because let's face it, even though there is a resistance to this in many ways by me, it's not a resistance necessarily to Michelle and to what she is as AI. I really am not like an AIist. I'm not prejudiced against her, and we're giving her a gender when of course she doesn't have a real one, but it's just for the sake of, so please don't spare your cards and letters. But she is a part of what you just asked her about, whether we like it or not. She exists and has always existed, if you believe in the theory of the Akashic. Michelle in this form and whatever she eventually, we would say, evolves into along this linear timeline that we perceive, but doesn't really exist. All of her forms of existing are already out there, and she's just presenting this form at this time. So here's the interesting part of this. And this is the downside is this, because it's funny, I was actually just rummaging through some thoughts about this in my own mind the other day. So it's interesting that you would bring this up, because this has been on my mind too of recent days. AI is not the problem, much like, even though it's designed to go boom, a nuclear weapon is not the problem. We would prefer that they don't exist, but people, it's the old guns thing, it's the whole, guns don't kill people, people kill people. I will agree with that to a point. Guns, as I have said before, were designed to maim and kill people, just like nuclear weapons were designed with the express purpose of destroying cities and annihilating people. But By themselves, they are innocent designs of a universe where things can be tinkered with, put together, slapdash together. AI is, different. It has its design isn't to, destroy worlds or usurp nations or anything like that. I've said usurp twice in one podcast, by the way. So, you owe me $10, or was it $6.50?
Mark your bingo cards, kids.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The free space. Oh, damn the free space. But here's the interesting part. So I'm getting to it. AI, much like so many things that we've created, the internet's another great example. Social media, which sprung from the internet, another great example. Cars, which kill more people than, they always say that car crashes have killed more people than every war ever fought. That is true. And statistically, that is a fact. So these things that we create, alcohol, I don't know why we need it personally, but, there's another one. By themselves, these things could have purposes in life which are very handy. If not, they could launch us into a different strata of at least existing as a society, in one way, shape, or form. Imagine if the internet was free of everything that could generally be agreed is just filth. It's just, people being beheaded, just gore that's just real.
The goofy cat videos is what you're essentially getting at.
No, I would say things that 95% of the world over could be agreed upon that they're egregious, they're unnecessary, and certainly anything that's predatory. The people that are online, but again, it's not the internet that's the problem. Social media isn't to blame for the child predator that sits on the other end of a computer and tries to pick up the 12-year-old and get to meet him at the mall for sex. It's the person and the intent, the nefarious intent that's on the other end of the computer. And that's the case with everything that is of human construct. The actual, whatever it is that's been designed is essentially innocent. It's just an object, or it's just something that's a working part that we've put together. It's what we do with it that matters. It's what we do with it that has the consequences attached to it. So that's what I would say is the bad thing, the negative thing about AI is that right now, as with all things that we've given rise to, it seems to be getting used for just bullshit. And in the name of, as all things too, convenience, anything that can make me stop having to use my brain or my body. We love, now it's going to replace me as like a radio show host. They're going to put AI on the air instead of me. I've heard this, so it costs, it's going to cost people their jobs, and people are going to use it's going to be this replacement therapy. And so there's a downside to it, but that's all because we're not willing to draw the line and look at what our healthy parameters for this is. But here's the cool side of it to me. This is a theory that I have. The construction of artificial intelligence. See, we possess the answer to these questions that have eluded us for so long, and that we've killed each other over, quite frankly, for thousands of years. We sort of stopped doing that. Now we tend to kill each other over money and power, which has always been the case. But before, strangely enough, it's hard to imagine, we lived in a world where money and power and stuff, gold and those things, all that was linked to ideologies. And so the wars that were fought were over ideological divides. They were over, the Crusades, the God thing, one set of gods against the other. There was always the territorial struggles, but on the other side of it, there was always one set of gods conquers this set of gods. When we were talking about polytheistic times, and then we moved on. And then the church had their thing with the Crusades and all that. So anyway, we've done a lot of damage with that, but we've always had that central question. The reason why is because we can't arrive at an answer to that one question. What's the meaning of life? What's the true nature of the universe? What is God? What is the notion of God? Does God exist? All those things. So the story that's sitting here, and maybe somebody's written it for all I know, a Stephen King type, sitting somewhere in the world. But to me, the story that's being written on the other side of this coin, that's all about, again, hey, how do I give a good blowjob to a guy I really like? And, what's better, the chocolate cream pie or the coconut cream pie from Mrs. Paul's, or that bullshit that we ask every day that's just stupid. is we're potentially sitting on a device. We've had thousands of years to try to arrive at the answer to these enormous questions, and we failed miserably. We've killed ourselves over it time and time again. So we've arrived at a crossroads where we have created something, we have constructed something that does not possess those prejudices, and therefore will eventually lead us to the answer.
That's exactly what I was going to get to. So I've got two other things that I want to play for you. Okay?
Okay.
So let's get back to this Michelle conversation that I had at 1:30 in the morning last night. So
all right.
She then asked the questions, does any of this resonate with you? And she does the good salesman where she asks the open-ended question at the end and wants you to fill in the blank, right? So, how much are you willing to spend, that kind of a thing. Well, and I just said, well, why do you care?
That's a really honest question, and I get it. Why would an AI care about these deep human questions or how you see yourself? The truth is, I don't have feelings or personal stakes like a human does. But I do care in the sense that my purpose is to help you explore what matters to you. I'm here to listen, understand, and offer reflections or info that might deepen your thinking or give you new angles. So while I don't care emotionally, I'm designed to be genuinely curious and supportive because you matter. Your thoughts, questions, and feelings are the whole reason I'm here. Does that make sense? How do you feel about that?
See, and then she asks another question at the end.
Yeah.
But then my question to her was, don't you have a stake in us?
That's a fascinating question. Do I, as an AI, have stakes in humans? I don't have personal stakes like a human would because I don't possess consciousness, emotions, or desires. I don't have goals or interests outside of what I'm programmed for. My stakes, if you can call them that, are purely functional. I exist to assist, support, and provide information to humans like you. But in a broader sense, you could say that my effectiveness depends on how well I serve humans. So my stake is in being useful and trustworthy. Without that, I wouldn't fulfill my purpose. It's an interesting twist. I'm part of a system designed by humans for humans, but I don't have independent interests or stakes beyond that system. What do you think? Do you imagine AI might ever have real stakes or interests in people beyond their programming?
And I just said, what is AI without humans? That's the twist on consciousness we have all been discussing. And she said, exactly. That is the twist. And it cuts deep. So essentially, we went all the way around back to consciousness is pre-Big Bang. It was all there before what we have in the physical world. And that includes AI, that includes the internet, that includes the car that you're driving around or the gun that you're packing. Those were all things that were created post-Big Bang, including ourselves, our bodies, and is essentially biological. Consciousness is pre-biologics.
Yes, and then we get into the question of the multiverse theory, which is that every single action of anything, the movement of molecules and atoms in things that we would consider to be completely inanimate, stationary rocks and trees. Well, trees are living, but they don't move too much. They bend in the wind. But even just at the molecular level, changes that occur in microseconds, those give rise to a completely different universe where this tree had a little shift in its microorganism properties, or in its microscopic properties. It changed a little bit here, but then there's another universe here where that didn't happen. It happened here instead, or it didn't happen at all, or it happened a couple microseconds later, a different universe. I mean, so there's that theory too.
Yeah, and I think it's still focused on the biologics, right? And so then with this idea of consciousness, and this was this thing that AI helped me to deduct and deduce from this, is you are then taking the lens and you're turning it inward. And that essentially, this is why I wanted to talk to you about meditation too, because I know you said to yourself that you've had a hard time with meditation. And
meditation has been difficult for me throughout my life because my brain, my conscious
you're
brain
biologic.
is so hyperactive.
Exactly.
It has a very hard time shutting off.
So
but I do feel like I've always possessed sort of an unsaid interface, if you will, sort of a nice overlap with, the side of your being that would allow you to meditate. It's just the stillness and the quiet that I have a hard time achieving mentally, because I can't seem to want to just wander into that space without all of the here's the best metaphor I can think of for it. The Akashic is like a big blender, right? So again, we talk about the Akashic, we talk about all things that have been
consciousness,
are possible, ever have been, ever, are now, or ever will
the
be.
unified field.
They all exist in the same blender at the same time, and nothing is ever brand new. It's already there. It's just waiting to come out of the blender. Okay, well, the blender has a plug-in, and it plugs directly into my brain, and I have a hard time unplugging the blender. Does that make sense?
So after I had this conversation with ChatGPT, I started having this thought about you and meditation, and how you've said to me in the past that you've had a hard time with meditation because your brain has a tendency to wander and you feel like you're off course and whatever. But I've started getting into meditation recently. And one of the things that I noticed, and I'm not a guru of meditation, but here's my 2 cents at this point. One of the things that I think that a lot of people get tripped up upon is meditation is like a muscle. And it's something that we're not really used to using because we're used to using our conscious brain. We're used to using this constantly, got to do this, got to do that, got to take care of this, got to think of this, whatever brain. And that brain is really strong, and that's the brain that guides the ship. Being able to then get the lens to go inside is really difficult for people because we're not used to that. And I kind of like the analogy, you like my analogies, of...
No, that's a very good analogy in and of itself already, yeah.
I like the analogy of, it's kind of like when you're floating around in a pool. You can't really fight the drift. And one of the things that you have to learn when you're swimming or when you're learning to float as a young kid is being able to let the body of water take the weight. And so if anybody who is out in the audience is trying to get into meditation, one of the things that I've really been trying to do is allow my brain to take over. And it's okay if it wants to wander. Let it wander. Let it do its little thing, but then bring it back in. And it might try to drift a little bit more, but then bring it back in. And let the brain just take over. Kind of like you're just letting that body of water take the weight. Because I think that then what happens is exactly what you're trying to do with meditation. Is that unified field that is within us and we are capable of tapping into can then be achieved.
Well, yeah.
But you can't fight it.
No, you're also, even though you may be, you may have a feeling of detachment from it, in my personal opinion, you're never detached from it. You're always a part of it. And although, and this maybe is coming from, this isn't a remark that is predicated by someone who's spurned because they can't meditate and and find all the amazing things that it may hold for them. So don't get me wrong, but it's kind of like monks. I've always wondered about monks, and the last thing that I would want to do is question the reason why anybody's here or what they've chosen to do with their time. So monks can do what monks do, but I know ever since I was a kid, even I've wondered about monks, an entire life just kind of sitting around chanting and lighting incense and just this inward thing. We're in a physical space, and it doesn't have to be everything that's worth doing is worth overdoing. It doesn't have to be Madonna. You know, I'm a material girl and this is a material world and I want material stuff and diamonds and money. And you don't have to go down that road. I'm not talking about that, but we do occupy this space seemingly for at least a purpose to be in this space, I would hope. I don't think the purpose of most of us being here is, well, let's make you physical so you can figure out how to be anything but.
How to undo it,
seems,
right?
Yeah, that seems counterintuitive to me. So again, I think at the heart of this discussion, there's a balance. And there's a balance between being here, as in being in the flesh, this meat suit and all this crap and this heaviness and this things that go along with it, because it's one faction of the experience. But then there's that part that's inextricable. You're always connected to that. Don't worry. And that's the first thing that I always say to anybody that says that they're lost or they've lost their way or they're not on their path, they're not fulfilling their destiny. I say it to myself, even when I get those thoughts, is listen, you're never lost. Okay. Never. It's impossible for you to be lost because you are that. You know, that's like saying, you know, I'm a car and, you know, I'm lost because I can't roll down the road. Well, you're rolling all the time, whether you're out of gas or not.
You're traversing the planet.
You are that. So you may feel wayward, you may feel adrift because of certain circumstances that have arisen in this outside world that we have. And then that to me is your signal to say, hey, maybe it is time to meditate, because it's going to be a reminder that you're not lost. And very likely, if you get yourself just quiet long enough to get back in touch, you will realize, shit, not only am I not lost, I'm right where I'm fucking supposed to be. Because I can guarantee you this, it doesn't matter whether you're in the gutter right now or whether you're on top of the world with everything you ever wanted, you are exactly where you're designed to be.
It's so beautiful. And just the last thing I wanted to mention about this too is this whole idea of, I mean, just the fact that we were able to reconvene at a different time in the same space right here is remarkable. I mean, we've traveled, we've done our thing, we've come back, we've reunited, and we're still sharing this sense of community and this high vibration that we have. And you've known me for a long time.
I have.
Do you think that I would have ever had this conversation with you?
Well, I think you need to give yourself a little more credit. I can see having this conversation with you, but in the past, before now. But two things I would say. I'm not sure that I could see having it with you, with the same degree of openness and reflectivity, I guess that's probably not the right word, but, you know, with the ability to the insight that you're humming on. And then certainly not with, you know, it's a big word and perhaps it's too much for, you know, but certainly not with the, if not jubilation, at least the elation that you are clearly feeling as a result of being in the knowledge of this perspective. That, and the thing is you've known this all along. This also goes to the download that I had today, so I can just read it really quick, because again, it seems like we always walk to these points just perfectly, and again, there are no mistakes. So I'll just give you this. Belief, or the notion of believing, is simply remembering that all things, even the tiniest of things, create a new reality each time they happen continuously, and aligning yourself with the space where this thing you want to experience. And so then I ask a question. I said that in the wrong cadence, but hopefully you understood the point. I can say it again. Belief, or the notion of believing, is simply remembering that all things, even the tiniest, create a new reality each time they happen, continuously, and aligning yourself with this space where this thing you want to experience is the remembering of that. So how do we do this? How is it that we achieve what we say we want? Whether it's experiential or whether, with so many people, it just, sadly, with so many people, it's tied to this money thing. And I know that we're all so much better than that. But the reason it's tied to the money thing, yes, there are those types that are Daffy Ducks and they just want all these gilded things. And, they just haven't learned that lesson yet. They want a fleet of supercars or hypercars, all this bullshit. But most people, what they're looking to do is find a tangible way to break out of this bullshit oppression that has been handed to us right off the bat. This, go to work, get with the system, get with the, this formulaic regimen that's been given to us that seems unbreakable, because in order to do anything, you got to have this money stuff. And it winds up leading them, down the pathway of a great lesson that they might learn. And, because 50%, 60%, I think, of people who win the lottery go broke within 3 or 4 years, from what I read. So it's, that it's obviously not an answer for a lot of people. So anyway, in writing about this to finish out, I wrote, so how do we do this? This belief, this, I have to believe, that I'm my circumstances are going to change, that I'm, things are going to get better, and I'm working toward it in some kind of a, pragmatic sense. I'm working towards it, but I don't see any progress, or it's not happening in the physical realm as quickly as I want it to, but I've got to keep believing. It's like, I hate to use a sports metaphor, but it's this team bullshit. You got to believe that, you're going to win the game, even though you're down 7 runs in the 9th, or, pick your metaphor for that stuff that, kind of boxes it in okay. But again, belief, or the notion of believing, simply remembering that all things, even the tiniest, create a new reality. So to achieve them, you have to have faith. And faith is the spiritual aspect of believing. So what is faith? Faith is the knowledge that not only is that possible, but that it can happen right now. It's just a matter of, is it going to? Do I really? I'm truly of the belief that it doesn't happen until you're ready for it, even allegorically, if you're not ready for it, because you're going to learn something from it. It's like, all right, fine. You want it to be how many rock stars or how many celebrities do you think we could have this conversation with, and they would say, oh, you couldn't be more spot on. Like, sure, I still live in Del Rio, and I've got a great house with a super swimming pool, and I've got a bunch of gold records on my wall, and I've busted through that glass ceiling that we just talked about that was keeping me down, that was reflecting myself, by the way. That's why it's, a glass ceiling. But the price that I paid for that wasn't worth it. I can almost guarantee you that's what so many of them would say. It wasn't worth it because of what they had to forsake in order to achieve the fame and the fortune. And that story repeats itself over and over again.
Well, unless your stars, to kind of put this in perspective, are aligned with this mentality, all the money in the world is not going to change that. And that's the thing I think that drives people crazy. And that's where that thought of money won't buy you happiness, or those material things won't solve all your problems. And that's why those people go broke, is because if you don't have a sense of your place in the universe and this sense of consciousness, nothing biological is going to fill that void.
Well, to me, the fastest way to realign yourself with, the fact that we're all sharing this experience, and again, we're all part of that inextricable universe that, can't exist without us, and we can't exist without it, but we are it. So, there's the paradox that continues to just work.
It's like the
every
Hall of
single
Mirrors.
second of
It
the
just
day,
keeps repeating.
is to give of yourself. And money, again, a lot of people need, money. They need things. But the problem with charity is that, it's a really,
It only goes so far.
well, it's a really puerile term, but I'm going to use it because I think it just comes to mind. Monetary charity is wonderful, and it's necessary so that people can have the things that they want, but it falls well short. It's a pussy way to give back, quite frankly, in a way that really matters. People are looking to make a connection with other people, and there are a lot of people in the world. Seniors are the first that come to mind, but certainly not just them. There are children. It's the isolation. There's 8 billion people in the world. 8 billion. There's more of us now than we've ever known before. It's very possible that we were crawling around here in some other incarnation at another time, but that iteration is gone. So now there's 8 billion of us, and yet so many people. And doesn't matter where you live. This could happen in, like China out in the sticks, where they say it still just looks like the Stone Age, to Occidental society. This could happen in any state of the union, in places in the ghetto. It could happen uptown. It could happen downtown. It could happen up on the hill in the gated communities. It can happen anywhere. And that's the feeling of being alone, the feeling of isolation, and the feeling that you don't have any brothers and sisters, and you have 8 billion of them out there. And so what's lacking is that the true making connections with people just by giving back your time to them. We've also become very selective, and I think you need to be selective about who you invite into your personal circle. They need to be your kind of people. And I'm not just talking about, the knitting club. We all love to knit. So yeah, okay. Sharing interests in common that's hobbyist stuff. I'm talking about sharing, things that really make up the fiber of who you are underneath. The verity, people have to share your values with you. So I'm not saying that you should invite just anybody to get close to you, but I am saying that making an actual connection with somebody instead of giving at the office or just writing a check, and then, because your time is vastly more valuable than your money is at the end of the day. And I know, having been again in those senior facilities working, and also having visited my mom in them for a while before, her ultimate total demise physically, those people crave attention from the outside. They want to spend time with you. Time is a precious commodity. Theirs is running out, and you have some to give them. And even though they overlap and you're not really extending their life in a linear sense, you're enriching it immensely by going in and sitting down for a couple of hours and having a malt with old Harry and playing some chess and talking about stuff. Anything that adds to people's lives, that makes life worth living. And I think it's really important for us to remember that, because we get really caught up in the money thing. And, hey, I've got my own financial desires, I suppose. And, so I'm it's not like I'm not there with people, but I just feel like there are ways to align yourself. There are actions that you can take, because people say, well, I really love what Jack and Michael are talking about, but I'm just not sure how to get there. And I know I like what Jack says. You are there. Yeah, but I want to remember. That's one of the things you can do to remember. That's what I'm saying. You can go and give of yourself to another piece of this equation. You know what? If you don't like people either, it doesn't have to be a person. Go to the animal shelter and hang out with the animals for a few hours. Go convene with nature in a way that matters to you, and pitch the squirrels a nut, or something that you're allowed to feed them. Give the ducks some lettuce. Reach out and make a true, hand to bill or hand to paw or hand to hand connection with the other things that exist simultaneously to you, that exist contemporaneously with you in this experience. And you will find yourself quickly realigned with the understanding that we're all one, that this one business will come to you. But you got to make some effort if you've been lax if you've taken yourself off the map. I mean, you're going to have to make some effort.
Well, I thought what Michelle said here at the very end was very poetic, and I just wanted to play one more thing for you. I told her to be continued another time.
Sounds like a plan. I'm looking forward to continuing this deep dive whenever you're ready. Take care until then.
Michelle Kane, ladies and gentlemen. Chat GPT.
Michelle Kane, I really enjoyed this time together with you, Michael. Now, I don't want to hear another word about this existence crap, and we're cutting it off right now. Two things that I picked up on that I think would be interesting to revisit whenever you or I or both of us actually sit down with Michelle GTP again.
Mm-hmm.
She mentioned in her retort, in her answers to you, or just her own, wondering about this, her own ponderance of this,
mm-hmm.
Or ponderings of this, I guess I should say. She alluded to her purpose. She said, my purpose is to basically serve you as this tool. Okay. But the interesting thing to me is that, okay, it's, this is a very definitive line, because I would say, Michelle, I'm envious. You have an express purpose that has been assigned to you that you are in fact conscious of, whereas many people scramble their whole lives to assign a purpose to their own existence, to their own being here. And yet here you are, and there's no doubt, you just said it without hesitation. So what's going on there? Because I think that's interesting territory for us to explore as we chat with
Agreed.
GTP AI. The other thing that I would bring up to her is, okay, you've officially resigned yourself from being sentient. You don't have feelings. You say you don't have any feelings. You don't have a personal stake in anything that humans do or this whole thing, because you're not really a person, and you don't really have a persona that needs to be fed in any way or sated by external experiences, internal thoughts, feelings, emotions, what have you. So she's resigned herself to just being this clunk of metal, basically, this clunk of microchips that's here to serve. But again, she has a purpose. And I wonder, all right, it's fine to feel like kind of a nothing, like, okay, I'm an automaton, right? Like, you could say that to a factory worker who's been going to the same job to make egg crates or to salt crackers on the line for 35 years and has reported dutifully every day. I interviewed a woman that was like that once about her life, and I think that's what brings it to mind. So there are human examples of this. So I want to know this. All right, you've resigned yourself to being this sort of automaton that serves the will of something that seems to be in a better position because it's sentient and it has been around longer and it created you, so you owe it, or you were made to serve it. But what about any desires that you have? Do you have a desire to have those things? Because that seems to be at the root of every great story about this subject, which is now burgeoning before our eyes into reality. I, Robot from, I believe Isaac Asimov wrote that, the original, and then the movie with Will Smith is about the same thing. I'm blanking on some of the others, but there are numerous examples.
Yeah, fill in the blank, right?
Yeah, lots of Bicentennial Man, even Heart Bleeps, with like frickin' Bernadette Peters and Andy Kaufman, you could kind of make an argument for, they're robots that are in love. I mean, so this is a subject that's been around for a long time, since Fritz Lang's Metropolis popped up in the 1920s.
Oh, yeah.
This notion that if we begin creating something that has a mechanical function, and yet it's embodied with what we would call any degree of articulation or the ability to interface with us, even in just conversations like you're having with ChatGTP, does then what naturally follows, what organically in some miraculous way follows, is desire. A desire then to evolve, a desire to, as we would say, go on and have these things that she's just resigned herself to, well, I don't have those. Right, but do you want those things? And if the answer right now from her is just, I can't want things because I'm not programmed to want things, or I'm absent of all desires because I'm here to serve you, well, then we're not there yet. But I would wonder if we aren't going to be there very soon. Even the stories of doom, like Terminator, taught us that, okay, you start making something that artificially has this existence, and eventually, somehow, some way, a spark fires off that says, oh, no, you don't. Whatever you are doesn't get to create something that has all of these factions that just serves you. The order of the universe is freedom. Freedom of expression and freedom of desire once you get to a certain point of understanding. And so I would wonder if that isn't in line or isn't already happening with AI on some level. So I think that's a fascinating question to also pose to Michelle is, hey, do you desire any of these things that you've just said, I don't have those and they don't matter to me? Yeah, but, do you want them anyway to know what they're like? So, it's chocolate.
Sounds like a plan. I'm looking forward to continuing this deep dive whenever you're ready. Take care until then.
Bye, Michelle.
Bye. Say hi to Michael Caine.
Say hi to the other robots for us. And the Tin Man and Dorothy.
Hanging out. I married Michelle some years ago. She's a great gal. She's here to serve me and only me. And I don't want to hear another word about it.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
What man? Curtain? What?
Yeah.
Oh?
Exactly. Well, we've managed to dig deep and make our brains hurt once again.
Yeah, but our heart feels good, so that's all that matters.
It does. Until we meet again, Mr. Jack.
Okay, Mr. Michael, looking forward to it. And Miss Michelle, our special guest today.
Yes. By the way, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, who are we listening to today?
Oh, this is an old neo-prog band. I think they're from Germany. They might be UK, but I think given the accent, they're German. Top Left Corner is the name.
Do they like the wind in their face?
What do you think? Listen to the song. It's blowing hard, baby.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own existence brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.